Heyo everybody, Haku here with a discussion and theory video on native ones from Tower of God. Now to tell the truth, this is taking a little bit longer than I expected it to because I already recorded this video once, but I wasn't really happy with it. I wasn't really happy with the way I worded things. It was kind of a bit disorganized because I just kind of like to talk to you all. I don't really script my videos out or anything. So to try to be a little bit more organized with this discussion, the way it came about is that a few months ago I had a theory regarding the native ones, and from there I was like, there's a lot that goes into this subject. There's a lot that I think are misconceptions, even on my own part, and that I need to correct. There's a lot of vagueness, a lot of things that I want your opinion on that we can discuss a bit, and I kind of wanted to turn this into a full discussion on native ones because there is so much that's questionable about them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, what are native ones? Because I think there's a lot to discuss there. The second thing will be, what elements are we working with in regards to the native ones? And lastly, we'll get into my theory as sort of the third part. So to start off, we're going to talk about what native ones are to begin with. So to talk about what they are to begin with, the story that we're given is that long ago there was this ancient giant. And the ancient giant split himself into 5 beings. Each of these 5 beings, like just to run through the basic story, each of these 5 beings could control a natural element of the tower. And it's not like this fire elemental Shinsu, it's actual fire. They could each control an element in the tower. And they passed on the ability to do this, the 5 parts of the ancient giant. And it's interesting. It's sort of like I wonder if it's related at all, a reverse of white and the 5 parts that fuse together to create white. The ancient giant split apart into 5 parts. Each of these 5 parts then went on and had descendants, and they passed down their ability to control the elements to their descendants. Well, the more the bloodline kind of thinned out when it comes to non-direct descendants, they sort of lose the ability to control the elements so much as just change their body's physical properties, and we're given Hess as an example, sort of, as somebody who's a non-direct descendant, could like have a dirt body, and eventually at some point, once Zahard was establishing his empire, he decided to straight up genocide the native ones. So they tried to kill them off, which is why direct descendants are exceedingly rare. And we know of one of them. We know that Rak is a direct descendant of the native ones, meaning Rak himself is a native one, I guess. I don't know. It depends on if you want to call them all native ones or if you only want to call the original 5 native ones. But either way, one of the things where I made a mistake is I always tried to make the distinction between tower natives and native ones by being like, okay, these are natives, but these are ancients. So anyone who was not from outside the tower is a tower native. When they talk about, oh, this person is a tower native, that doesn't mean that they're a native one. People like, again, we're assuming here, people like Quadrado or Grace Merchia Lizlek are people who were already inside the tower. They would be tower natives. But native ones, I shouldn't call ancients, they are actually native ones. The Korean itself is phonetically native one, so it's not like a Korean translation to native one, it's actually a proper noun, capital N, native one. That's what they are. And I also want to say that I think there's a difference here too between native ones and ancient creatures, because what we've seen of native ones doesn't exactly fit in with, say, Highbrider or Akranak. I think that Highbrider and Akranak, whatever they are, these ancient creatures, are different from the native ones that descended from the ancient giant, because again, they don't look like animal people, they don't control elements, so I think they're different things. And one huge thing that I wanted to bring up as a discussion between me and all of you, because I think I have a differing opinion than what seems to be the majority opinion. I think that the native ones and the cursed people are 2 entirely separate things. So as I talk about the cursed people, I actually have, had to find my mouse, I actually have an image to throw up as we're talking about them. So when we get the story of the cursed people, it is in reference to Yura and her family. And we're told that the cursed people were cursed by Zahard to try to thin out their numbers and given 3 curses. And the translation, I don't know if it's an and or an or thing. Most people view it as an or thing. Most people view it as They are either male and female in one body, and we have this first example, and people say, oh, that looks like Akka, which makes sense. Akka Williams had sort of this androgynous appearance. A lot of characters, most characters, referred to Akka as male, but some, like Prince, referred to Akka as female, so it makes sense, both male and female in one body. The next thing they say is that they had their power sealed away, and people think the next one looks like Rak, and they're like, oh, so that means the native ones like Rak, or the second curse, and I just don't think, or I don't think so. I think the native ones are too important to just be a subset of cursed people. And besides, the thing is, we're given the native ones description and backstory and lore and all, and the cursed ones backstory and lore and all. It happens in the same arc, but they're in completely different chapters. They don't connect to one another at all, other than people saying the silhouette looks like Rak. And they're about two different characters. The cursed people explanation is about Yura, and the native one explanation is about Rak. They're two completely separate things. So I view them as two completely separate things. And the third curse says that it was difficult for them to have children, which, if you think that the three curses are separate, would mean that that falls in line with Yura's father, but Yura's father didn't look like this goblin person, so I don't think that's a thing. I view it, again, here's the first of the two places where I think I differ from the majority. It seems like the majority think that all three curses are different, but I think the cursed people have all three curses. I think the cursed people have male and female in one body, have trouble having children, and also have their main power, like their true power, sealed away or whatever. I think that that's the way things were with Yura's father. I think that Yura's father also had kind of a androgynous appearance, and because of that, Yura's mother was going to have problems and lose one of the twins. And I think that Siyu's sort of cop-out way with the male and female in one body thing with Yura was to have the female part, and I think they even specifically say this, the female part end up as Yura and survive in the real world, and the male part survive in the data world, which ended up becoming Huang. But I guess Huang technically was, like, Huang took over the body of Yura's brother, but technically wasn't Yura's, like, actual brother. And I'm kind of bummed about that, because I would have loved intersex representation Yura. I would have loved just saying, oh yeah, Yura's intersex. That would have been pretty cool. So I view the curses as you have all three. I would say if Yura didn't have a twin brother, Yura would have all three. That's my personal opinion. We also, like, another sort of monkey wrench in this is Taro York, which I don't quite understand yet, because this silhouette, you could argue, looks kind of like Rak. I think it looks, I don't think so. I think it's, like, way more bird-like looking. But then again, Taro York looks like Rak, but has, like, fur, and I think Taro York has red horns as well, so I'm not quite sure. Here's the thing. I view the native ones and the cursed people, because of everything I said, as two separate things. Another big thing that I think contributes to me viewing them as separate things is the native ones were genocided. Zahard's empire just tried to kill them all off. That's different than cursing them so that it'd be difficult for them to reproduce. That's why I think they're two separate things, because, like, straight up trying to genocide them and giving them the curse just isn't the same thing. And I think that's where I'm in the minority. I think the majority of people view the native ones as a subset of cursed people. And I'm not going to say that there's zero possibility of that. My personal opinion is that they're two separate things, native ones and cursed people. One thing I think is definitely not true is that all cursed people are native ones. I definitely don't think that's true, because Akka's not a native one, Yura isn't a native one. But one thing I will be willing to concede is it's vague. We don't know if some cursed people are native ones. So it's either they're two separate things, or not all cursed people are native ones, but some of them are, which I don't really like. Because again, I feel like the native ones should be more important than just being a subset of cursed people. Again, the backstories between them were two separate things given in two separate chapters about two separate characters. So I like to view them as two separate things. But again, I feel like this is one of those things that I'll leave open for all of you to discuss, just because it is vague. It's kind of vague. It could go either way. With this first topic, I just wanted to check really quick and make sure that I didn't miss out on anything else I wanted to say. But no, I think that covers it pretty well. about what each of them are from what we know in the lore and why I think they're two separate things. But again, there's a lot that we don't know about both groups. So again, we don't quite know yet. But from there, to move into the second part of the discussion, we know that, sorry, again, I keep forgetting where I put my mouse at. For the second part of the discussion, we know that the ancient giants split into 5. Each of them could control an element. And we get this image. We get the 5 elements. And at first, I'm just like, okay, earth, water, fire, plants, and is it crystals? Ice maybe? Ice makes a lot of sense to me. And it could just be 5 random elements like that. Like Naruto's kind of 5 random elements. It's the 4 sort of Western elements of fire, earth, wind, and water, plus lightning. I've never seen that done in other series. And even in a lot of Eastern-inspired Western series, like sort of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they use the Western, typical 4 elements of fire, earth, water, and wind. And it eventually hit me when looking at this, and like I've read Tower of God a million times by now, it feels like. It eventually hit me. I was like, why am I looking at this from a Western point of view? Eastern countries, Asian countries, typically don't view the elements as like fire, water, earth, and wind. The most popular and common way to view the elements for like hundreds of years at least has been based on the Chinese principle of wuxing. And again, sorry about any of my pronunciations. I know quite a bit of Japanese, but I don't know much at all of like Chinese or Korean or Vietnamese, but I know the same thing. Wuxing ended up becoming Gogyo in Japan, and Oheng in Korea, and even Nhuhan in Vietnamese. And so like this concept spread around, and even like the Japanese days of the week are based on it. There's the sun, the moon, and then the 5 elements. And the 5 elements in Wuxing and all of these Eastern sort of cultures are fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. So that got me thinking, this is written by a Korean author. Why was I looking at this the whole time from like a Western perspective, when in reality, the elements that Siyu would have grown up with, or that make sense to most Asian people, would be fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. So it makes me think, is that what this is? If so, it's a weird presentation of metal, because I'm like, this totally makes sense, except that last image, I'm like, I guess metal could look like that, maybe some sort of metal ore, but that's the only one that doesn't make sense. It still kind of just looks like ice to me, probably, maybe crystals. But I would say my guess is gonna be that it's the 5 typical, Eastern elements, just because all the other 4 fit, and I just think that metal makes the most sense at this point. So that's what I'm guessing the 5 elements that the native ones can control are. But again, it's one of those things where it's up to interpretation. You can let me know if you think, nah, it's got to be ice. Because I tried to look more deeply into it too. I did so much research for this video. I looked into all the different elements and typical Eastern, I don't know, like lore surrounding them. I don't know which words to use for all of this. And there wasn't really any deeper meaning. And sometimes I have to take a step back and remember, this is CU. I have to remember, this is the Starbucks trio guy. Sometimes CU just names things whatever. He just bases things, like he takes inspiration from whatever, and sometimes it's not super deep. Just because something is based on something doesn't mean it's going to line up 100% and there's going to be this crazy web network of connections like in, say, One Piece, where people can make theories all the time because there's so many little connections that are just, I don't know, insanely detailed. And that's not really the way that CU does Tower of God. So I have to remind myself of that. So yeah, my best guess, he just used those 5 elements, being fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just made up his own 5 for the sake of Tower of God. Now, the last thing I wanted to get into is finally the theory I had that I thought of months ago, is that each of the 5 elements, each of the 5 bits that the giant split himself off into, are based on animals that are famous from Africa. That would be my guess. And the reason I came to think this way is because, of course, we had, and like each of them responds to a specific animal because we've only seen 3 of these elements used so far. We've seen Evankel's elephant Sasanoa, which uses fire, and Evankel says, isn't fire elemental Shinsu, it's actual primordial fire. We see that Rak isn't just using earth elemental Shinsu, he's using actual earth. And of course, Rak and his people are crocodile people. And then lastly, the thing that made me think, I was like, yeah, crocodiles are just famous animals, elephants are just famous animals. But what really got me on this theory was seeing this guy right here. This guy is a Cape buffalo or African buffalo. Again, one of the most famous animals in or from Africa. And I always called Kilhelm's sort of ancient stand that he has, his bull Sasanoa. I called it bull Sasanoa or a bison, and it totally doesn't look like a bison. What it does look like, though, is this. And I was like, oh wow, that's neat. That's exactly the animal it's based on. I was like, okay, so it's based on a Cape buffalo. It totally looks like that. That's where Siu got the inspiration for what his sort of native one looks like. And that's when it hit me, okay, Cape buffalo, really famous animal from Africa. Same goes for elephants and for crocodiles. I mean, they exist elsewhere in the world, but they're very, very famously from that continent. So I thought about, okay, we got 2 more elements we don't know about. We don't know about what water or presumably metal, maybe ice is all about. So I was like, let me find the most famous African animals I could, and I just did so much research, and I was like, is there any lore, any significance connecting elephants to fire or connecting crocodiles to earth? And no. Siu, again, maybe could have just picked what animals he thought looked cool. No, there were no like connections. I was like, I researched so many different African cultures. I'm like, are elephants connected to fire? Are Cape buffalo connected to wood? Found nothing. Yeah, so 8 animals I came up with that I was like, I think these are the most famous. These show up the most when searching. Were the elephant, the buffalo, the rhino, the lion, the leopard, the crocodile, the hippo, and the hyena. So we already have 3 of those as, earth, crocodile, fire, elephant, and wood buffalo. So that would leave us with lions, leopards, hyenas, hippos, and rhinos. I think hippo works perfectly for water. If we see people controlling water in the future, I think hippo works perfectly. I mean, I guess rhino you could say as well, or maybe you could get one of the like leopard or lion, one of the big cats. But I think hippo controlling water would be really good. And then it comes down to metal. Since we do already have sort of bigger, bulkier animals like the elephant and the hippo, if I'm assuming hippo is going to be one, like rhino would still be cool, but I'd like to have the lion or the leopard in there. If you were to take my prediction, my theory, I'm hoping metal, leopard, and water hippo. But again, this is one of those things. Do you think one of them could be lion people? Do you think one could be rhino people? What do you think we'll see in the future of Tower of God? So again, I'll leave that open to you. And that's, I guess, where I'll end the discussion. Those are kind of the 3 big things. I wanted to talk about what native ones actually were and get your opinions, get your impressions about what you thought native ones were in correlation to the cursed people. If you think they're the same thing, or that the native ones are a type of cursed people, or if, like me, you just think they're 2 separate things that aren't really connected, because, again, the cursed people are called cursed people, native ones are capital N, native one. And I just view them as 2 separate things because of how they were introduced, and I always have, and I think I'm in the minority on that, but I don't necessarily know if I want to change other people's minds on that, but I at least want to put the idea out there in case maybe I am proven right somehow in the future, so that I could be like, okay, so the idea was already out there that this is the way things could be. And I wanted to gauge everyone else's opinions and see what you thought. Secondly, the elements. If I'm going with the 5 elements typical in Ohang in Korean, just the typical fire, water, wood, earth, and metal. But again, that may be typical, but Siu could have just made up his own 5. And lastly, I wanted to talk about my theory that all of the animals that the native ones are based on are from Africa, and also that each element is based on a certain animal. Again, we don't have a big size, like a big sample size to judge this on. We've only seen one fire elephant. We've only seen one wood buffalo. We've only seen one rack controlling Earth. And there are things that could throw a wrench in there. Like, I have no idea what Taro York is. He looks like Rack, but he's fluffy. I'm pretty sure he has red horns. I don't 100% remember what Taro York looks like from the top of my head. So there are like wrenches you could throw in there, but I wanted to throw out that that was my idea, that they could be based on famous African animals, and see what you thought the last two might be, just as like a fun sort of thought experiment, like what you thought could represent metal, or if it is ice, what you thought could represent water. For me, I'm gonna go for leopard and hippo because I think those two would be cool, but we'll see. Either way, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I made this video once and I didn't really like it, so I was like, okay, let me do a second take. Let me make this again. So sorry it is late because of that mostly, and because of all the research I put into it, which took a little bit of a while. But yeah, super big thank you for sticking through this. Like if you did like the video, comment down there. Again, tell me your opinions on all this, what you think of all these subjects. Subscribe for more Tower of God, much more on the channel. I'm going to be trying to, every cycle I go through, trying to do a Tower of God video or two. I'd rather do two every time I go through. So what I'm doing right now, I'm doing like up to 3 anime videos, up to 3 manga videos, 2 Tower of God videos, like 1 or 2, but I'm hoping for 2, 1 or 2 Kubera videos, and then 1 or 2 Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint videos. That's sort of the current schedule I kind of want to get to. But I kind of want to speed that schedule up and start putting stuff out more. It's just that a lot of the things I've done have required more time, and fighting with YouTube is a real struggle. So sub for any of that. Follow on Twitter if you want to talk there. I'd love to talk there as well. Subscribe. Ask if you want a link to the Discord server and I can give it to you. I'd love to talk on Discord as well. And if you'd like to help support the channel, you can do that. Help me keep making videos by either going to patreon.com/HakuOfTheTubes, or the link will be in the description and all that as usual, or by supporting by being a channel member. Join should be right there below the video. I don't know if it works on mobile or not. It really should. You would think it should, given how big mobile is for YouTube, but I'm not certain if it really works, because I've had some people say, yeah, it didn't work for me on mobile. But thank you, huge thank you to people who are already patrons and channel members, already supporting the channel that way. Huge thank you to the chosen regulars, Etchy Zero, Evan, Holly and Remorseful, Magical Girl, FR Nono, Cherryton Students, also the Storyteller and David Langstaff, and Slayer Candidate SG. Big thank you to all of them, and big thank you to all of you for watching this video, watching everything. Yeah, seriously. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.